Hello, and welcome back to the sim. In this one, we're jumping in with the HJet and version 1.0.5's release candidate. This one's got a whole bunch of changes and fixes to the autopilot, the VNAV, and we're going to go ahead and fly a routine flight we like to do to test these things out. And as you can see, we're in a pretty hulked out livery created by Waffler. So let's jump in and get started. First thing I like to do when I jump in is get rid of the yokes, get them out of the way. Then we come in and we get the battery on and get everything started. Now before I forget, I make sure to push in the oxygen supply. I do follow a checklist, but hey, I like to do that. Let's get the screens up. And let's go in and initialize our flight. We're going to have a couple passengers in the back on their way to Ottawa. Give yourself a little bit extra fuel, more than enough. We're going to go into sim actions, and of course we want to bring up our ground power. Now that it's available, come over to the left side and enable that. So now we got our ground power and we should be good. So let's go back to initialization, and we're going to start our pre-flight. And of course, as we look back, we can see all of our lights, push, fire, stick shaker going. All lights come on. And we can go ahead and clear our CAS. So coming back down, that is complete. So we can go back. We got the check mark. We're going to pull that from sim, our payload. We're going to pull that from the sim, our 2 passengers, 170. And then we're going to get fuel from sim. We've got our takeoff calculation, and we come on over. Let's pull in to pick up our V speeds. Those look like what we usually get coming out of here. So with that, we are prepped on this. Going to our aircraft systems, we are going to look at the electrical. 25.4 on the voltage of the batteries, 28 volts from the ground power as we would expect. Environmentals look good. Fuel, just double checking, compares to what we loaded in. And hydraulics look good. Ice protection, yep, automatically should have the windows green. Everything looks good. Coming back to status, we've got our lights in the appropriate places. Nav on because we are powered up. So with that, we can come into system controls. You'll see there's now a lighting to be able to control the overall lighting of the master GTCs. Also inside of system controls, we've got our exterior lights, our interior lights, and of course the cabin control if we want it. Of course our footwells, they look so pretty. But we're going to go ahead, get our fasten seatbelt and our smoking or no smoking lights turned on. Of course, checklists coming in. There is a reset all function now, so you can reset them. So look, for now, let's go back up to here and go ahead and follow our checklist. So batteries on, oxygen, we already pushed it in. Pressurization, so what this is referring to is looking at your pedestal. So you're going to see, well, sorry, that we'll get to momentarily. Pressurization is here. Our electrical is here. So on, normals across, on the ground, ELT is in the normal mode. Nose wheel steering is normal. Our landing gear is down. And our alternate gear release is stowed. Our parking brake is set. Our flaps are up. Our thrust levers are in the cutoff position. Note that there are click spots here for taking them out of idle. That was added in 1.0.4. Speed brake is retracted. And now we come to the pedestal. Ice protection, normal, normal, off, normal. So those are correct. Fuel panel, So our fuel panels, they're all in the normal position. Our trim panels are all set to normal. Our windshield heat is normal, and then our pneumatic panel, we are in the normal with the engine bleeds as well. So coming up to the glare shield, it was referring to this area. Yes, they are all dark. Servos are dark, so everything is correct. And chime, which would be the mute, is dark. And avionics initialization, of course, completed. So first up, we're going to go ahead and check that the parking passenger briefing is done. Yes, we already did that. We make sure our parking brake was still up. Rudder pedals, yeah, I moved mine. Seats and seatbelts are secured. Doors are all closed. Parking brake is set. Then we've got our CAS message review. So coming in here, these are all the standard messages. And of course, the external power door is open because we are on external power. So those are reviewed and are okay. Again, the electrical volts at 23.5. So we can easily come into systems, go to our electrical, and yes, our batteries are above 23.5, so we should be able to have good starts. Engine start. So we're already up to the process of the first engine start. You can see that you can pull the external power afterwards. It's automatically going to do that once we start an engine anyway. For myself, I still have no problem coming in to our sim objects and pulling the ground power ahead of time. So I go ahead and I pull the ground power. So once that is complete, now I'll go ahead and I will start the first engine. So away it goes. And yes, could have pressed the click spot, but I do have my throttles coming out of the D10 controlling that. So, and engine 1, or well, engine 2, the one on the right, our first engine that we started, was a good start. So let's go ahead and do the same for the engine on the left. Ignition, starter engaged, and we've got spool up, 20 seconds, and that's all it takes to get your engine started. And when we come back to the electrical on the aircraft systems, you'll see that it disconnected the cabin power the moment that we basically engaged. Also, because the ground power is removed, the bus tie is now removed, and they're on their separate buses, and bus tie is out. If we enabled the bus tie, we not only would get a CAS message, but normally that's open, that's normal. So open would disengage it in normal mode, or dark, it's automatically going to tie the bus when it needs to. Okay, so engine starts are good. Now we can come in and we can turn our cabin power on so that the people in the back have their power. Clicking on the checklist button on my yoke, which is also press not there, press there, you'll see it jumps back. So engine is good. Engine instruments, we check them as they went up. Engine anti-ice is required. We don't need it this fine morning in Toronto. External power has been disconnected, and flight controls are free and correct. So, before taxi, wing anti-ice as required. Transponder code. So, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we want to make sure to do TA. So this is going to give us our advisory only. So it's not resolution, it's just traffic advisory. So transponder is good. Flight ID, well, our flight ID is entered. Flight plan. So today's flight plan is going to take us from CYTZ. And yes, jets can't fly out of CYTZ, but I fly props into here. CYOW So we've got our destination, we've got our origin. I tend to go straight to procedure at this point because this will fill in most cases, short routes like this one. It actually links it up and I don't have to enter any en route waypoints by myself. So we're going to use the Beaumet 7. We're going to be off runway 08 today, thanks to the winds. We're going to use the MyVOC transition. So we're going to go ahead and load that. And then when we zoom out, you can see MyVOC takes us over halfway to Ottawa. So with that, when we come in for our arrival, we're going to be taking the Capital 5 arrival. Oh, automatic systems just got brighter. Very cool. Of course, you can come into system control, come into the lighting control, and reduce it. So we're going to do the Capital 5 arrival. We're going to expect runway 7 this morning, as the mornings tend to have. And we're going to use that MyVOC transition. So by loading that up, it completes our connection. And you'll notice the loading of the SID doesn't have any of the altitudes, but the star does. So because we're expecting runway 07, we're also going to set up for the ILS 07, starting at, it should be Visol, but for some reason, this won't let us go straight Visol. That's okay. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the OW, which would take us to a OW, AMOBI, back to Visol, back in. So hopefully we'll be able to skip some of this and see what happens. So we've gone ahead and we've loaded that. So if we come back into our, and we'll just drag here. Yeah, so it's got those AMOBI. It's got a bunch of user waypoints to perform the procedure turn and then direct into AMOBI. It's different, definitely different. And I don't believe we can remove it. So what we'll probably end up doing is trying to activate the last leg. We can also just manually set up when we're inbound from Visol to capture the LOC. So there's a lot of opportunity there to show how we can get away from automation and control these things ourselves anyway. So now that our flight plan's entered, we still, though, would like to fix up or have a little bit more information. So coming off here, we have a great climb. Probably by TSUC, we're already going to be able to get to our cruising altitude of 27,000 feet today. So we're going to go ahead and put that at TSUC. And so we're going to expect that type of a climb profile. So when we come back to the procedure page, we've got our departure, our arrival, and our approach. So looking again at our flight plan, on our departure, it's dragging this backwards. We're going to fly runway 08, and then we go Lodra, and then there's a user waypoint that it is inserting for us. So basically, you have to fly out, and you make this right-hand turn, and it's actually basically vectors. You're vectored out kind of to sea, and then they'll give you a direct away point. And usually they actually skip us past Davsy, and a lot of times they just have you go direct TSUC. And again, it's just from this angle, it keeps you out of some of the VFR traffic and some of the other people that they're bringing in. And plenty of times, once you're even on your way to TSUC, I'll get direct Canic, I'll get direct Lanark even. So they'll cut the corner real easy and just send you on your way. But for today, let's go ahead and try to keep it as we see it. All right, so that's in. Flight plan is in, and then navigation source, we got to make sure to come over and select that we want the FMS. We're going to come into our PFD settings, other settings, our wind. I thought this was remembering. I guess it's not. So we've got our PFD and our wind. Of course, it wouldn't really show this, but that's a sim thing. Altimeters. So there's a couple ways to do this. One is you can actually just dial up based on your physical altitude, knowing how high the airport is. Or of course, you can come to weather, pop out the Metar page, and see what it says. 00, 2 knots, and 29995. So let's come up here, and 29905, and 29905. So altimeters are set. Flaps set for takeoff. So we move our flaps into the takeoff position, and we verify here on the engine instrument gauges that they are in the takeoff position. Speed brake. So we retract it, or sorry, we extend it. We see that it moves from retracted to extended. We put it back, and now it is retracted. Good. Cabin signs. We've already set those. And now we can go ahead and release our parking brake. So during our taxi, we're going to check our brakes, we're going to check our nose wheel steering, and we're going to check our flight instruments. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. So we're taxiing to runway 08 today, which means we will be taking off into the sun. Oh, fun. All right, so brakes are good. And it definitely seems like more steering is available to us in 1.0.5 than 1.04. However, I do feel like we've now gotten a little bit more twitchy on the roll, on the takeoff roll. So I'd almost take back having to fight a little bit on the ground steering and use toe brakes to have a little bit more grip on the takeoff roll. But then if Microsoft fixes that, of course, we would have all kinds of issues. They'd have to be switched back again. So I get it, is what it is. Not an active runway anymore, used as a taxiway, but we'll check it. Flight path is going to be good. Whoop, got a little off. Checking those, turning right, turning left, turning left, turning right. I was looking at my instruments. That's what I was doing. Nose wheel steering, yes, it's working, and flight instruments are checked. So we'll get our flight director on. We'll dial up our altitude. We're going to go straight up as an unrestricted climb up to 270. Hello. There we go. And we are going to be runway 08. So we can also dial in our heading as we're taxiing. All right, so it's going to be fly runway heading, and then follow the first waypoint to Lorda, and then we'll be on our way. So nobody on final currently, so we're going to go ahead and take the runway. So flaps are set for takeoff. Trims, so we've got to put our trim, get those green triangles. So anywhere from, it looks like 4.3 today to 3.7, so we'll set 4.0. Trims are set for takeoff. Speed brake is retracted. CAS messages are reviewed. Navigation is set. And flight controls are set. Toll data, yes, we loaded it. Takeoff briefing is complete. Radar as required. There's no storms this morning, so we're good. And ice protection as required. So after takeoff, we're going to get our landing gear up. We're going to verify engaged. On the yaw dampener, we're going to get the flaps up over 130 knots. We'll drop thrust levers back into MCT, and we'll check flight guidance as required. So we're ready to go. Let's hit the toga switch, which, if you're curious, it is down here. So toga. So we've got our toga on our display. So we're going to slowly advance the throttles. Smooth all the way to the takeoff position. $80 knots. And rotate. And tap the brakes. Gears going up. We're going to start making sure that we do that trim. And we're going in FMS mode. Follow the flight directors. Flaps can go up. And we're starting that turnout. Make sure our yaw damper is on, which it is. And we're going to go ahead and get our autopilot on. And we come back into MCT. And we can see as we pull back our throttles, there's a range. It drops into MCT, so it doesn't have to be a perfect click. So now that we're on our way up, we're going to go ahead and get flight level change on. And then we're going to dial up for 210, which is our climb profile. So zooming in on our map, you can see we're on our way to our first user waypoint, and we are in the climb. So landing gear is up, yaw dampers confirmed on, flaps were retracted, thrust levers were set to MCT, flight guidance is enabled, ice protection, cabin signs, we're good. So in the climb, we're going to check our pressurization. So we're looking at our pressurization, and our cabin altitude is rising. Current PSI of 1.9, so that's in the green, and our cabin rate going up at 300 feet per minute. We can see that the landing elevation in Ottawa has already been recorded. So now we're making our turn towards Davsey. So pressurization so far has been checked. We won't clear the line until we get to the transition altitude. Transition altitude, because we're in North America, 18,000 feet. So yeah, good to go there. When we look at the status page, we can see that everything's normal. Our lights are in magenta because they're in the auto mode. So the recognition light is automatically on, strobe is on, beacon is on, nav light is on. But the landing light, of course, went out as we raised our landing gear. So as we came through, we wanted to press standard pressure, 29902. We also wanted to set this to 29902. And you'll notice that the sim is flagging ice is present. So coming down to the CAS message, ice protection not active, ice is detected. And so that's just referencing the engine anti-ice. The others were obviously automatically on. We set those to on, and it has begun. So if we go to our aircraft systems real quick and we look at our ice protection, we can see that the wing temperature is heating up nicely, and our engine anti-ice is now active. So those elements are on, and I guess we need it because ice is detected. All right, so through that set, we are still on our way to our cruise, but our altimeters are now set for cruise because we crossed standard BARO. So we can go ahead and confirm that. And then again, we're just looking to monitor the status, our environment, so we can see the temperatures are good. Everything is still warm back there. Looking at our electrical system, we can see our loads and our current voltages. Fuel. We are still pumping out of the center tank first, and looks like we are burning appropriately and still looking good. Hydraulics, we didn't have a leak, and of course we already saw our ice protection systems. So we're going to come into our system controls, and we're going to go ahead and turn off the cabin signs. As we're approaching our top of climb, if we zoom out, we can see we're going to reach it by Taleb, so definitely a lot earlier than TSUC. So next up, we are going to prepare for setting up in our cruise. At 27,000, we're not going to be able to maintain maximum continuous thrust, so we will have to pull back the speed. So we'll go ahead and use CSC mode, and as we approach that, we'll catch up again. So as I started approaching about 260 or so, obviously there's a little bit more headroom. I start to pull back out of MCT and put myself around 89 and 1, just to see the speed start to stabilize. It needs to be a very stable speed before CSC will engage. If there is too much fluctuation in the speed per second, it is not going to engage. It's kind of like a cruise control on a car. You want to get to where you want to be, and then when it seems stable, you hit the CSC button, and if all is good, it will capture that speed. It'll go into magenta, CSC will arm, and then what will happen is plus or minus 5%, and 1 is the authority it has. And if it has to adjust too far, it's going to drop out of CSC mode. The moment we move the throttles, it's also going to drop out of CSC. But looks like it's happy, and now it's going to manage via N1. So since we've already reached our cruising altitude, we've got our CSC all set up. This is the point where I start to prepare for VNAV and top of descent. Now, again, the next waypoint is going to be 23,000, and if you zoom out, I always go the wrong way first, you can see all the step downs that are programmed in. So we're going to come down, and if you have entered your charts, then of course you'll be able to grab your charts, and we can go to our CYOW charts, and we're going to want the ILS 07. Chart options, I find the white very bright. Sometimes I like to go into night mode. Just seems to be a little bit easier to read sometimes. So what you're going to see is, coming from Visol, there is the AMOBI, and then you do the procedure turn. So from Visol, you could have gone to YOW back into AMOBI, but no procedure turn is necessary. There is a direct entry. So really, this would be an example where a final, or vectors to final, but a final transition is actually approved. But that's not available in the Sim Flight Planner. So Is what it is. But what's great is our VNAV takes us currently down to 3,000. So if we look at our flight plan, so let's go into half mode, and then we'll flip this guy. There we go, rolled over. So we'll bring up our flight plan. So we have our map and our flight plan. And so what you'll see is on our transition, drag this guy down, we go to Visel at 3,000. So we're actually going to end up skipping all this because right from Visel, we're going to be able to pick up the localizer. So we'll be able to flip over. So the important things to keep in mind is we're going to be needing a loc of 109.5. Now, usually it auto-tunes, but I'm going to go ahead and put 109.5 into my standby anyway. So we've got 109.5. Approach course is going to be 71 degrees, and what's great is we're literally going to already be on that as we're coming in straight from Visel. It's a straight in. It's perfect. Of course, we would be with our arrivals, and we would pick up our ATIS on 121.15. Oh, it's over there. I know that one by heart. Ground, and we need to verify that we're picking up the glide slope at 1,700 feet at AMOBI, so at our final approach fix. So right here at AMOBI, we want to make sure that we verify that we are reading 1,700 feet to confirm our BARO. We have a decision height of 200 feet, which is 570 on the BARO minimums. Of course, we still don't yet have minimums. Those will come after some of these more important updates are complete. So wanting to have a lot of this automation functionality dealt with so that things like minimums and quality of life can be added. So I agree. Sounds like a great plan. Airport elevation 377 feet. Touchdown zone 373. Landing field elevation is 355, so it's somewhere in the middle, I guess it's pulling it from. But I've always known it as 370 is what we dial in for Ottawa. And you can see the touchdown zone elevation is 373. So on the missed approach, we would climb 3,000. We would be direct to the OWNDB, which is straight out. And then from the OWNDB, you have right-hand turns in the hold, shuttle climb to 3,000 as necessary, and then to go again, you would procedure turn your way back out, direct to AMOBI, where you would do the procedure turn to come back inbound. So if we have to do that, we know what we're doing. Okay, approach briefing is complete. So we're going to go ahead and come out of full screen, and let's go back to our flight plan. Let's bring up our map, and we'll go back to flight plan. And with that, we are approaching our top of descent. So we're going to go ahead and arm our VNAV. So VNAV is armed. It's waiting, and as you can see, CSC has stayed armed, so we're still good there. So we've now got to dial down our altitude selector before we forget. Normally I do that first, but we were chatting. And again, we want to go down to 3,000 because at Visel we're going to then be trying to capture the glide slope. And we're on our way down, so we're going to start pulling back our throttles. You see CSC drops out. Technically, CSC should have dropped as soon as we entered VNAV. So as soon as we exited altitude hold, it should have dropped out. But that's okay. We need to pull back the power anyway, manually. So we're good there. So we're riding that barber pole, but we want to... So let's see if we can pick up that Metar in Ottawa yet. Not picking up from Ottawa, so if we look close by, we see Kingston. Kingston is 29908. So we'll be looking to set 29908 at least momentarily until we can pick up Ottawa again. Oh, Rufus. So, coming to our checklist, we monitored systems the whole time. Landing field elevation 355, it was set. Engine anti-ice as required. So ice is still detected, so we're gonna have to leave it on. As the air density is changing, we need to power back a little bit more so we don't get into the barber pole any further. And altimeters for the descent. So normally you do it right at the crossing altitude. We are on the descent, so I mean, we're just going to go ahead and dial it to 29908. And we're going to set this to 29908. Yes, the zoom, always fun. So altimeters are set. All right, for approach, seats and seatbelt signs adjusted and secure. So as we're coming down through 18,000, sure, we can come over here. We can go into our system controls, interior lights, and let's get them on for the back. So, seats and seatbelts. Passenger briefing, yeah, cabin signs. Avionics have been set. Our landing data confirmed and set. So now we've got all of our information in. Let's go home. Let's go to our performance. Let's go to our speed bugs. Let's go to our landing. Let's get our current weights and information. So we've got our approach speed and VREF. So landing data is confirmed. CAS messages checked and verified. Approach briefing. Well, we already did our approach briefing. Approach briefing is set. And we're really starting to creep up into that barber pole. I know there's a little bit of extra headroom, but I don't want to push it too far. So for our approach, we've got flaps to go, so we're going to stay here on our checklist. So when we come back, we can see that our landing light is still off because it comes on having to do with gear and altitude and flaps and a few other settings. But you can see the recognition lights are on. The ice lights are on since our icing systems are on. Strobe light is on. Beacon is on. And the nav light is on. And now that we're in range, we can see that Ottawa's actually 300 and variable wind. So yeah, we'd be able to land anything that we want. Absolutely 07 straight in would be the best option. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to adjust this to our final BARO of 300. And we can see that our nav1 is alive, IOW is there, and we have our loc basically alive. So at this point, since we are going to be cleared to the loc, and we are still descending, what we can do is we can already switch to the loc. And so now it's going to fly onto the loc. And so we could go into heading mode. And we could go back into nav mode. So now we're on the loc, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to capture the loc. We are in pitch mode still, so we're going to just go ahead and switch to VS, and we're going to turn off VNAV at this point. We're going to maintain this all the way down to 3000. We could have stayed in VNAV. It dropped to pitch because we changed the mode. But it's fine. You could see the glide slopes above us, so we could capture it from above. However, we intentionally want to come in at 3000. That'll give us time to slow up and get our approach flaps out. The FMS guidance is, of course, saying, hey, you're supposed to fly around to OW and come back in. Yeah, no, we're good. So for example, at this point, probably what I would have done is I would have said, no, we're going to go direct to AMOBI, and that would have activated the straight in to AMOBI and cleared the rest of them, right? So activate AMOBI, good enough. Go back to our flight plan, though we don't need it. We're going to come back up. So we are level at 3000. We're going to go ahead and arm the approach and the glide slope. We see the glide slope is coming in. We're dropping below 200. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We captured, drop the gear with that dot. So of course, a little bit of flaps, a little bit of gear, a little bit of drag, needing to slow up to get back on the glide slope. And our speed is coming in. We're passing through 3000, that's good. As we recall, on the go for the missed approach would be to fly runway heading 3000 direct to OW on the 236. 236 being the ADF frequency, but we would use GPS for this. Alright, so we're below 160. So landing gear is down, speed brake is retracted. Flaps, we're below 160, so we can go ahead and get into landing configuration. We get a little bit of that balloon as they deploy. And then our speed starts coming in. We are looking for VREF, and then disengage autopilot short final at minimums. I'm going to try to arrest that descent. And as you can see in this configuration, the automatic landing lights have already come on, so lights are good. Traffic. Traffic. Well, let's see what the wake turbulence is like. 400 to go to minimums. $100 to go. And minimums. Autopilot and yaw damper are out. Crossing the numbers. Pulling that power back. We floated. See? Pulled a little too much. Pulled a little too much. As we were getting low, just the slope. But, I mean, it's still well within the touchdown zone. Nice and smooth. A little bit of a float. Hopefully, it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and we'll exit here. And head right into SO Innotech, because, hey, that's where we'll be dropping off our passengers so they can head in for their meeting here in Ottawa. So as we cross the hold short line, we're going to go ahead and make sure that on landing thrust went idle, yes, brakes were applied at touchdown, speed brake was extended. So after landing, cabin signs as required, so we can tell our friends in the back, hey, you know, well, yeah, but you shouldn't do that till you're parked as private. Engine anti-ice. So again, we know that we can turn our engine anti-ice off. Speed brake, we retract. So now we see it go into retracted. Flaps need to go up. And trim set to the green. So we go ahead, dial that back into the green. Good citizens. So let's go ahead and get parked and get it shut down. So normally at this point, I expect most people are done and dropping off. So if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't, so you can come along on some of the other videos that we do. Obviously, mostly we do some how-to tutorials on SPAD, but we also like to fly the planes once in a while. So we're going to pull into the Innotech Center, park, and let the peoples out. So there we are. Let's go ahead, get our parking brake on. Wheel chocks, don't have those yet, so we're installed. Anti-ice is off. External power as desired. So we want to come in and we want to bring in our ground power unit. Of course, we can't plug it in until we get the engines shut down. So that's good. Thrust levers go to the cutoff position. And now we see external power is available. Go ahead and get that on. Cabin signs done. Oxygen supply. We can pull that out. parking brake release, but if we do that, it's going to disconnect the tug right now, or the power cart, so we don't want to do that, and then battery can go off. And of course, everything stays on because we have ground power, and we're ready for our turnaround. So checklist before engine, it's recycled. Of course, we could come back into our checklist and now have the reset all button, so we're ready to go for our turn. So let's go ahead and get the shades in so that the heat doesn't happen. Let's get all the doors open, and we're ready to deplane our passengers. Well, that's going to do it for this one, guys. As mentioned, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and come along on the next one. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.